a failure is an opportunity for learning if you actually learn from your mistakes and then do it again.
Yeah.
A true failure is when you fail and then you don't learn anything and you fail again doing the same thing. Welcome to the Leaders in Tech podcast. This is one of the best business and technology podcasts on the internet. And we focus on interviewing amazing leaders in technology and how they're changing the world for our place within their organizations by producing amazing technologies that are increasing profits and creating more abundance for everybody. Today we have with us Alex Jimenez. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Great to be talking to you again.
Fantastic, Alex. For the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Do you really want the full name? Because, you know, we have very long names. So
that would be wonderful.
So my full name is Alexis Reynaldo Jimenez Picon.
Awesome.
But I go by Alex Jimenez. And I am a managing principal at EPM Systems, and specifically in the financial services practice. So my role is working with banks, credit unions, wealth management firms, Fintech companies on helping them transform their businesses into the current and future digital space. And even some of the fintechs that are already, natively in the space also need help. So, so that's what I do. Tons of experience in banking, over 20 years working at banks. And for the past 4 years or so, I've been doing consulting with them. So it's been really interesting seeing all the changes in the industry and in some ways getting involved in some of those changes.
That's beautiful. Alex, can you expand what EPAM does and what do they stand for?
Sure. So EPAM is a 60,000 plus a person company. We're based out of Pennsylvania, but we have locations throughout 50 plus countries in the world. And we're a digital transformation firm. And what that means, we do product development, we do consulting, we do design, and we focus on several industries, and financial services is one of them. So I can speak about our banking and our wealth management practices, our payments practices, but we have a whole other world that I don't interface with a lot in other industries, in the retail industry, supply chain, etc. Plus the really in-depth knowledge of technology. So we have, a cybersecurity expertise, cloud expertise, of course, software development, deep software development experience. So we're a soup to nuts digital transformation, right? We can help you define your digital strategy, and we can help you execute it down to actually building technology and applying technology to it.
That's fantastic. And it blows my mind when I find companies like this that nobody really knows about them. Everybody hears other famous companies, but
yes,
like I never had a company with 60,000 employees that I never had before. And I am in the industry, as you know, we do very similar things, right? We do digital transformation and the only focus on software development for us. But crazy.
Yeah, we have grown. We started in the early 90s, and we have grown wildly, mostly through word of mouth. And while we have a pretty great marketing team, it has been more of that word of mouth that has driven our growth. We're starting to try to get our name out there more because there's so much you can do with just word of mouth, and so trying to get the EPAM name out there is one of the challenges that I have. So.
Right. I remember when I first learned about Accenture, for example. I learned about it because they had billboards in every major airport in the world. So it's impossible not to know about them,
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. We don't do a lot of that.
So Alex, getting to where you are as being a principal and doing a lot of consulting for the banking industry, we share a lot of the same passions. I love fintech. Some of our very biggest clients are in banking and insurance, but I know it's not easy to get there. So, quick question: how do you actually ended up in the banking industry to begin with? So, how long ago was this? And what was your line of thinking, or what opportunity presented itself that you can open the door and get into that?
It was a total accident. So my degree was in engineering, mechanical engineering. I graduated in a year where the U.S. defense was actually cutting back. And so that meant that a lot of engineers were being laid off, and they were not hiring new engineers. So I wound up getting a job with an insurance company, and I was in an insurance company for about 10 years. So that really was my very first career.
So wait.
Yeah.
Mechanical engineer in an insurance company. Can you explain that?
So I took a job at it was a property and casualty company, and they were looking for people that were really great with analytics, that could think analytically about problems. And specifically, I was hired to work looking at risk management of property and casualty insurance. So I would travel to many of the companies that we insured to make sure that they had appropriate controls over whatever risk we were insuring. So if it was a property, I was looking at the sprinkler system, I was looking at the construction of the buildings and so on. So you can see the connection there to engineering. If we were insuring a product, we were making sure that the products were being manufactured appropriately, that they met all the appropriate standards, and so on. Funny enough, I wound up being focusing on healthcare and education. So I spent a lot of time working with school districts on their safety programs, and nursing homes and hospitals, looking at their the way they care their patients and so on. So I started straying away from engineering fairly quickly once I started that job. Then after 10 years, I got an MBA, and I started looking for more of a management sort of opportunities, and I wound up going to work for Fleet Bank. And that's how I got into banking. And I worked at Fleet for about 10 years, mostly in their corporate strategy department. So doing M&A and developing strategy and executing strategy. So certainly not anywhere near any engineering at all. It was really applying a lot of the business school stuff. And that just led to, my involvement in banking, and certainly change management. And change management nowadays means digital transformation.
Yeah. And so when we started getting involved with technology and started, becoming a leader in technology?
Well, that's sort of interesting, because I work for a company that's very much about technology, but I call myself a banker. So I'm a banker that likes technology as opposed to a technologist that knows about banking. And what I mean specifically is that, I'm more focused on what banks and other financial services organizations do from a strategic standpoint, and technologies enables the execution of that strategy. And how I sort of got involved in technology was the introduction of the mobile phone, of the iPhone, was really the tipping point.
It doesn't.
At that point, at that point, everybody started thinking about this new form that we could be using to do all kinds of things. And for banking, we started talking about apps, etc. And it just happened that I was at the right time, at the right place. I moved on to manage deposit operations at a bank. And what that meant was that I own what we called electronic banking then, or online banking. And now we're introducing a mobile app So suddenly I own the app. I own the department that worked on rolling it out, on finding the right vendor,
build it.
and so I was there at the right time. Because I like technology, I started talking a lot about how this is going to change the industry. And somewhere along the way, I pretty early on, I got quoted in the Wall Street Journal about some of our plans about our ATM upgrades, because I also own the ATMs. And so that sort of snowballed. I started getting calls from American Banker to talk about mobile banking. I presented at an American Banker conference back in 2010 about mobile deposits, which then led to another conference and sitting in panels. And suddenly I was a voice in fintech pretty early on, working at a bank. So yeah, and so I started making connections with lots of people in fintech, and that's sort of what happened. So I really wasn't, there was no master plan there. It was just what I liked, what I had passion for, and what I thought was really cool about banking. And certainly the standard banking stuff was not cool enough. This technology stuff was the stuff that was cool.
And so tell me, on your first project, when you decided to hire a contracting firm to build your iPhone application for your deposit systems, how was your line of thinking? Like, how did you do the process of elimination to find the right partner?
Yeah, well, we were strictly a buy shop. We were not building anything on our own. So as many banks, particularly small community banks, we always looked at our core vendor. And we always look to see, okay, what are they offering it? And it already works with our core, and we don't roll it out. We looked at what our core vendor was offering from a mobile standpoint, and then we looked at what was available in the market. It was clear that they were not the leading vendor. So we just went out with an RFP with what we wanted. We talked to many of the leading vendors of the time and made a choice. Funny enough, 3 months into the rollout, our core vendor acquired that vendor, and therefore, it was all in-house anyway. A few years later, we went out with another RFP, and we actually chose somebody else. And that was a difficult decision for everybody, but the right decision for the bank and for the clients, for the customers. So it really, smaller banks are sometimes in a disadvantage because they don't have a deep technology team. Their technology team generally is a break fix, a help desk for internal and a vendor management program, right? Because they buy everything else. And integrations are generally done by the core vendor or the other vendors. So as you get bigger as a bank, then you start looking at how you could bring some of those integrations in-house, how you start building your own dev team, etc. But the smaller banks really are stuck in that situation. On the other hand, they can also, plug and play and move to something else quicker than a bigger bank that has built everything on top of something else. So there's plus and minuses on another side.
And I guess the bigger the organization, the slower they need to move, because it's very hard to move something that big, right? I remember one of our first contracts in Fintech was for a large multinational insurance company. And because back then we had a lot of Java expertise and .NET expertise, they hired our firm because the back end of their benefits program was done in Java, and the front end of the same program was done in .NET, because they just decided to change technologies along the way. And this is a company that has 1,000 developers full time.
Yeah,
right?
And at least there were modern languages.
Yeah, but oh my God, the Java was horrible, because back then, like 2000, I'm talking 2009, 2012.
Yeah.
Our computers were the fastest computers we would get, and the compilers were bogged down just by compiling the Java applets, and but it was funny because I realized that, when you work with large organizations, you have to go at the same pace and try to innovate, but the innovation has to be very carefully laid out. Otherwise, things break, and they cannot afford things to break. Because the other customers, right?
Yeah, the other piece is that there's plenty of banking or financial services organizations that are very much waterfall, right? And they may have like a little team that does agile on the corner and so on, but making that jump is a significant one, right? And once you move to agile, then can you scale your agile methodology to be able to encompass all of what you do? And that's a really big challenge. So even if an organization, are quote unquote agile, they still are working very much in a waterfall world. Particularly when you start looking very high up, looking at how they get funded, how things get approved. You might be thinking that you're an agile organization, and yet you have, this waterfall thinking that it starts at the very top of the chain. And so, a lot of the challenges that we see are those sort of things. But like I said, Java, at least Java is a modern language, whereas, a lot of the banks are stuck with core systems that were written in COBOL or C++, right?
Yeah.
And I worked for a bank where we had 2 COBOL developers who were in their mid to late 60s. They had already retired, and we had convinced them to stay. And we were trying to cross-train a couple of our other developers. But the younger developers that we were cross-training were in the late 50s. So, we were just sort of kicking the can a couple of years. And certainly the new developers that we were hiring didn't want to learn COBOL. Right. Because they didn't see that as a marketable language if they didn't want to stay in financial services. So.
You touch a great point, and this is, I think, still the case for large old banking and insurance systems, and they still their main backend is still in COBOL. When we built this group benefits application, we had to do a messaging system that would actually feed data to the COBOL backend, and from there all the way to the front end, it was object-oriented and modern and web-based and cloud-based. But the backend, it was like a black box, nobody could touch it. And the COBOL developers that maintained that, they were like semi-presidents, semi-presidents. And like, how do you touch them,
Yeah, no, you couldn't. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Right. So what was your first failure in technology by being a business leader? And how did you overcome that?
It depends how you define failure, right? So one of my roles at the bank that I was at when we rolled out mobile banking and so on was thinking about the next thing, what we wanted to do, how do we grow, how do we increase revenue, how do we improve the customer experience, etc. And we had a project looking at debit card loyalty programs. So this is not technology specific, but it was one that it was the first one that I thought of when you said that. And, I spent probably about 8 months modeling a loyalty program, talking to different vendors, understanding the market, understanding margins, etc. And at the end of the day, we didn't roll out anything. And my boss at the time said, "I can't believe we spent all that time, such a failure." And to me that wasn't a failure. That was a success. To me was we proved to ourselves that we couldn't put forward a loyalty program for a debit cards, that the economics were not there. And therefore, we didn't actually then roll it out and then have it fail. We stopped it before we even did that. So to me, she saw that as a failure. I saw that as a success. More on other things that didn't go well is when we changed our second time to our new mobile app, different vendor. We went from, we picked a vendor was significantly different from the first one. The customer experience was very different. In our eyes, it was much better, but it was going to be a huge impact to our clients. And so we hired a company that was going to help us support our customers. So, we had a call center with 40 people, and then we hired this company that would have another 100 people available for phone calls on the day that we threw the switch. Well, we threw the switch, our call center got killed. Our vendor got no calls. And the reason for that was that the way we had our phone system set up, and nobody got this until afterwards, was that all our calls were coming in through our system, and our system was capped to 40 calls, let's say. So all the overflow didn't go to our vendor because there was no way it would go to our vendor. They might have got a couple of calls, but it was just the way that our phone system was set up. We should have set it up so that setup would have been the handoff would have been before it came into our system where we had the limit. So we got killed. It took us about 2 days to figure out why our vendor was not getting calls. We finally figured out how to programmatically make the change, but by then the majority of the pain had already occurred.
Right.
And so some of the learnings from that was understand your whole technology and how you're trying to support the client. That was number one. Number two, don't do too many things at once. So one of the things that we did is not only did we change the experience and it looked significantly different, but we also added new security measures. And people, when they saw all these new measures, instead of trying to figure it out, they just called us.
Yeah.
And so we had way more calls than we could support. We had a lot of people complaining on our Facebook page and our Twitter page. We had some bad press, some local bad press about how we batched the rollout. But at the end of the day, the rollout worked out well. It was just that our customers were so accustomed to just any problem to call us and they would get service, and they didn't get that. And suddenly they were on hold for an hour or 2 hours to just get a real simple answer. So that, to me, that was a huge failure. I thought I was going to get fired. After that, I did not. I think we had a lot of learnings from that. Our vendor got a lot of learnings from that. They changed some of what they recommended to their clients and for rollouts. And we survived, and the bank is doing well. The bank has more than tripled since then. I'm not there anymore, but certainly they've done well, and they're still on the same platform. So, sometimes failures are not true failures; they're just learning experiences,
yeah. I actually believe this is all the time. A failure is an opportunity for learning if you actually learn from your mistakes and then do it again. Yeah, a true failure is when you fail and then you don't learn anything and fail again doing the same thing, which is kind of like crazy. But every failure gets us to a better place. And you know what? That's why I much rather using Agile than Waterfall, because in Agile, the failures happens faster.
Yeah.
So you can correct them faster. Mm-hmm. For example, when you mentioned that your program was not applicable like that, the debit card royalty program was a crazy idea. That's beautiful. That's actually a success, because you realize there in the program that was not going to be successful. Right? And that's what I tell my team, right? Always tell my team, if you find mistakes, find them as early as possible in the sprint. right?
Yeah,
And make sure that this gets corrected, and you go to your business partners to figure out how to have a better measurements in place, or whatever it is that is failing, right?
Yeah, I had a CEO once where I made a presentation about our digital transformation, digital strategy, and one of the phrases that I used in the presentation was, "We want to fail fast." He stopped the meeting